Hey, good morning. You know, several years ago, we laid out a vision for fiber connected to every home, to every community installation, to every school, every municipal building, and that came to fruition. And you know, when you couple that along with some of the efforts here in the university, particularly like Dr. Dunaway here at NIMSAC and the work he's doing around community resiliency for a smart city, and you look at what Dr. Henry Chu's doing around health informatics and health outcomes with the Louisiana Center for Health Informatics, with the computer science and informatics with Dr. Borse around his education in VR. Each of these are smart city approaches. But when you lay these complementary areas together and you lay the foundation, lay on top of the foundation of fiber, it becomes very interesting. And that foundation is what has enabled us to get recognition last summer from US Ignite as one of their first 15 gigabit cities. And Dr. Mohan will talk a little bit about that in a little while. You know, not long ago, in an effort led by CGI with a partnership with the city and with UL, we were awarded an EPA Smart City grant. And while it's around air quality sensors, it's really about how do you lay a smart IoT foundation for the city. And then just recently, a few weeks ago, Mozilla Foundation announced that Lafayette will be one of their partner gigabit communities. In fact, Jim will be here later. She's currently on Joel's radio show right now. So again, the momentum is building. We are being recognized for laying that foundation. And today we're fortunate to have speakers coming in from out of town to help us build on that foundation. And that's really what today's all about. In conversations with the mayor, you know, he really articulated 3 areas that he was very excited about. He wants to have a very transparent government. He wants to have a government that's run by the citizens, a civic-minded government. And it kind of all fits under his umbrella term of, I want to improve the quality of life for all of those around Acadiana. So that's really what it's about. And I want to thank the mayor and thank the Lafayette Consolidated Government and all the entities within the municipality who have. And Will and I first went in to talk to Joel about Cajun Code Fest and about how the city can participate. We kind of went all in, and we walked in and asked if we could have all of the data sets made available to the city, to the citizens. And he didn't flinch. He says, let's do this. And he was all in, fully committed. And you know, Tanya and her group, and on the IT side, as well as all the other departments. And we now have 130 different data streams coming from the city, from planning and zoning, from budget, parks and recreation, public works, crime. All of those are now published and made available for the first time. I think Mr. Como's here. He talked a little bit last night. He called it the Rosetta Stone of data from the assessor's office. He has posted for the first time all the parcel data for the city of Lafayette, the parish of Lafayette, to the citizens. So thank you all from the city for all of your effort. There's a few advisors that were real key in this, and I know a lot of them are here today. I want to thank you all for the inspiration and the direction for all of this. Just one more thing about Cajun Code Fest. This is our fifth year in doing this, and we've changed the theme a little bit. With everything that we talked about just now on laying the foundation, we really wanted to give our developers an opportunity to give back to the community. I think most of you are aware we have a very active developer community. And it's important to us that we continue to develop that. I know UL is working on turning out more and more computer science graduates to meet the demands of the Inquiros, the Proficiency, the CGIs, the Waiters, as well as a lot of other existing technology companies. We're building an ecosystem internally. And when we proposed and gave them the option of doing community work and jumping on the opportunity of a smart city and being able to interpret that data and provide it in a meaningful way back to the citizens, the response was phenomenal. We have over 18 teams that have signed up. We've had to cut off registration. So 130 coders, 18 teams will spend the weekend focusing on developing solutions to give back to the citizens of Acadiana. And I think what's even more impressive is we have 6 student teams from K through 12 through the university participating, and that's just phenomenal. So great for that. So enough of my talking. So I've been very, very fortunate to work with Nishal through the US Ignite and my role as a technical leader here in Lafayette as the representative. You know, the leadership from US Ignite, the experience, the innovative approaches that they bring have made them a very respected NSF-funded organization. And Nishal's bio is pretty impressive. He's a science and technology policy authority, an innovative genius in the areas of big data. Got in very early on driving that. Focused a lot on next generation internet as well as smart communities. So he's an expert in public health and published many research papers and a published author. You may see him often interviewed in magazines, a lot of videos on YouTube, all of that, and so much sought after speaker. So more importantly, he's a great sponsor of UL. And he spent 8 hours in the Houston airport trying to get to Lafayette last week. So I appreciate his dedication and commitment to get here. So Dr. Nishal Mohan, National Community Leader, Smart Gigabit Communities for US Ignite.
Do I need a microphone? Can you guys hear me? Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. That's pretty great. Thanks so much for that very generous introduction. I'm really excited to be here. I've been looking forward to visiting Lafayette ever since I've been working with them on the federal side indirectly 3 years ago, and now within the last just over a year with Matt and Michael Dunaway in our Smart Gigabit Communities program. What he forgot to tell you is that I'm actually a trained molecular biologist. But I'm in science and technology policy. And today I want to talk to you guys at an upper level about smart communities or smart cities and what we've learned at US Ignite over the last 5 years of its existence, and especially over the last year and a half or so with the Smart Gigabit Communities program to build smart cities across the US and now internationally with Adelaide, Australia. So I'm going to divide it into 3 parts. So we've got infrastructure, community activities, and next generation applications and services to support smart cities. And this is all geared towards happier citizens, smarter, safer, healthier environment for them. So I think what we do, most cities that we find, especially Lafayette with the Plan Lafayette 2015 document, we know where we want to go, but how do we get there, right? And that's what we've been dealing with. Did I miss a slide? No, it's rearranged, but I'll come back to that one. So that's what US Ignite's been involved in creating, but using next generation technology. So we have worked on creating the next generation of applications and services that leverage advanced networks, gigabit networks. Lafayette is one of those cities that does have advanced networking to build a foundation for smart cities. Now, the Smart Gigabit Communities program is the evolution of years of US Ignite work. Right now we have 21 cities. San Diego isn't on this map yet, but they just joined. And as Matt said, Lafayette is one of the original US Ignite Smart Gigabit Communities cities sponsored by the National Science Foundation. Just a quick background on US Ignite. It was funded with support from the Office of Science and Technology Policy and the National Science Foundation, and that's how Lafayette is funded to join this program. So let's go back to this slide, if you don't mind. Let's talk about smart cities, or smart communities as we call them. So, you know, a smart city, call it a smart city, call it an Internet of Things, call it a cyber-physical system. Or, if we break it down at a technology level, The most common smart city technology we see today are small, inexpensive sensors everywhere. These can be flood sensors, pollution sensors, sensors on traffic lights to optimize traffic, emergency routes, and so on. That's the most common. At the next level, we see the integration of a local storage facility and compute facility that can process all of the information very quickly that's coming from these sensors. And at the next level, which we're talking about advanced networks, and advanced networking here are low latency, right? So the thousandth of a second response time, reliable distributed networks that can take the process information and get it to the services and applications out there, public safety back to the citizens for immediate response. I mean, you'll see later during the flooding, you know, it's critical if you had this infrastructure in place to get information to the right people very, very quickly. And what we end up with is a smart, adaptive, and responsive system that is your smart city. And I think Lafayette is primed for this because all the pieces are there. As I said, we'll divide it into three parts. We'll divide it into infrastructure, community, and applications and services. So the part that our program builds on top of the networks in these cities are already there. In Lafayette, for example, we call it a digital town square. And simply put, it's like a plug-and-play smart city processing center that's local. It's connected to the gigabit connectivity there. It's connected, as you can see from that map, it's connected to all the other smart gigabit communities, so you can share services and applications, data sets, and you're connected to them through that gigabit connection. It's secure, and now we're working on going from fiber optics to advanced wireless, right? Gigabit wireless. And as a side note, US Ignite and Northeastern University were just awarded the $100 million Next Generation Advanced Wireless project. So this is great for all of our current communities, including Lafayette, because as we work on applications and services on wired gigabit, we're looking to the future to integrate these services into wireless. So that's the infrastructure part. The next part that's really important, and the one that I'm really excited about, and that's worked really hard with communities, working with Matt and Michael right now, the communities, to make this smart city sustainable. We can have the technology, we can start things, but they will not be sustainable. What we found is that we need participation, not all at the same time, but at different phases, from civic groups, anchor institutions, such as your libraries, schools, hospitals. Foundations are important for funding and for support. Corporations, entrepreneurs. That's a huge core that drives the innovation ecosystem locally in our cities. Of course, investors. And I've listed some of the groups in these categories. So, of course, the mayor's office, the city council. I put the Department of Transportation there because of their recent efforts that are very popular. Academia, that's been a driver here in Lafayette with Matt, Michael Dunaway, and so many representatives here today to drive the research part of the innovation ecosystem. Foundations, you're going to hear from Mozilla later today, Kauffman Foundation. Corporations, your gigabit ISPs, I mean, look at the list here. This is exactly what's needed. And of course, the developer. Your developer groups, your local groups, your Cajun Code Fest participants. These are key individuals that's going to drive the ecosystem here. Of course, investors to invest in the creations from these, from the coders. We found that one of the best practices is our communities where it's not just a code fest where they code and that's the end of it and come back the next year to code, but the whole pipeline that drives it through acceleration to deployment and funding. And the third part, of course, which is core to this, are the next generation smart city applications or smart community applications. So we focus on all of the national priority areas, so starting at the top, healthcare, going to the left, advanced manufacturing, energy, smart transportation, public safety, and education. And when I talk about smart city applications, next generation applications, I'm talking about applications that take advantage of gigabit speeds, take advantage of real-time activities, low latency, so, you know, thousandth of a second response time. That's reliable, especially with public safety initiatives here in Lafayette, that's important. Cyber-physical interactions, like interacting with all the sensors across the city. Big data to the end user in a simple way to bridge that digital divide. Something that's collaborative in a distributed system. But, you know, to think about some of the gigabit applications, some of the concepts they incorporate, it's like streaming virtual reality and augmented reality. That's real time. Remote control of devices, autonomous vehicles, your smart city traffic lights and so on. Ultra high def video streaming in 4K and 8K. I'm looking at you, Andrew, pioneer of 4K streaming there. Telepresence, and this was the mind-blowing experience for me. The first time I experienced low latency FaceTime. It's just something you have to experience. Without latency, it's like I'm right here. It was that wake-up moment 3 years ago where I wanted to dedicate my time to this initiative. Big data, you know, processing complex databases, protected data. Advanced networking allows us to have splicing of our edge computing resource so that for financial, medical, and public safety data, it's much safer. And of course, it allows us to repurpose infrastructure in emergencies for city resilience. So what I'd like to do is talk about a couple of examples of cities that we've worked with over the years and what their gigabit ecosystem, their gigabit fiber and the ecosystem they've developed has done for them. So Chattanooga, Tennessee, the first gig city, now the first decade city. And you're going to hear later from Andrew from Chattanooga today. They've leveraged their network to bring gig speeds to over 170,000 people and businesses. Their efforts, and this is important also for Lafayette, is to focus in on a couple of areas that are important to the city. You know, they've had smart grid for energy, additive manufacturing, healthcare, and especially education and training efforts. They developed a gig tank accelerator to drive development of gigabit next generation applications. And dozens of startups have gone through that. They have their Hackanooga, which is similar to Occasion Code Fest. They've built out their innovation district. Businesses have established themselves because of the gigabit infrastructure there and the activities. So Amazon, Volkswagen, Access America, and so on. And over the last 5 years, more than half of the jobs created there were due to the gig infrastructure. So with the gig infrastructure in place, there's a lot for a city. Now, we talked about applications, and I thought it would be fun just to show you some quick videos of the applications, actually. So Chattanooga developed a digital telemicroscopy application that runs on gigabit. So it allowed students in Chattanooga to use an advanced microscope in a research lab all the way in California. They were able to look at 4K, take images, high-resolution images, 4K video, and at the same time have FaceTime with a researcher, which is pretty incredible. But, you know, I'll just let the students tell you themselves, if you don't mind.
Ever think about the micro world that surrounds us? That fascinating world that is critical to life on Earth, and yet is otherwise invisible to us? Well, kids in Chattanooga, Tennessee are about to learn about this world in a whole new way, thanks to the National Science Foundation, US Ignite, researchers at the University of Southern California, gigabit connectivity, and high-resolution microscopy.
Marine biologist, Professor Dave Karen, has just started teaching a class at USC with remote students at STEM School Chattanooga.
STEM students in Chattanooga, home to the country's first community-wide gigabit network, are experiencing biology and STEM like never before.
So what's exciting is we've taken a digital cinema camera that would normally be used for making Hollywood movies and combined it with this microscope and put put it under remote control, so you students in Chattanooga can actually move the image.
It makes it look 3D by the different shades and different colors.
The interactive, high-resolution microscopy system enables researchers at USC to place live biological specimens under a digital cinema microscope and capture ultra-high-resolution movies of the microorganisms while simultaneously transmitting live, high-definition images from the microscope system to students in the STEM class. Under the guidance of the USC biologists, STEM students can enhance their learning further by manipulating the microscope effectively at very low latency levels.
When our teacher first talked to us about it, she was like, you're going to be able to control the microscope. And we were just like, oh, okay, cool. We get here and it's all these fancy controls. So you've got the big screen, and we were just kind of in awe.
The project represents the first to integrate digital cinema, optical microscopy, aquatic microbiology, flat panel displays, and gigabit networks into an educational environment in a scalable fashion.
So, what Chattanooga has done is they've run this through their gig tank to develop curriculum for it. They're working in a hub and spoke model where they're getting their own microscope, and all of the other smart gigabit communities can become the spokes so that their students can experience the same thing, sending water samples. Flint is one of our places. Can you imagine those kids sending water samples to Chattanooga for analysis? So that's just an example, and I'm partial to it because I'm a biologist. The second example I want to talk about is Kansas City, right? And this is Kansas City for both states. And what's happened there because of the gigabit networks and the activities we've helped to support. So they've drafted a playbook for the city that's a good model for smart cities. And that's something that we encourage all of our communities to do, to build a playbook. And you guys have already done quite a good job on your own Lafayette playbook that you're going to hear later about. They have enhanced their smart gigabit city infrastructure by taking the connections to school, libraries, museums, hacker homes, and so on. And they have over 125 meetings throughout the year for developers and small businesses, like maker fairs, hackathons, billion bits, startup weekends. In fact, my counterpart is in Kansas City right now for a gigabit hack day. To coordinate best practices across the country, taking advantage of the publicity there. It's actually contributed to their enhanced bond rating. And what I'm really impressed about is their digital inclusion strategy, which they put a lot of work into to bridge that digital divide. Kansas City has a gigabit applications ecosystem that they've developed through hackathons that continue throughout the, consistently throughout the years. These are 4 applications. Planet Impact, which is an urban development application. It uses gigabit speed internet for 3D modeling and navigation for clients, for civic leaders to make best decisions before building. Gigabots, which is actually Lego Mindstorm robots that kids can use either in person or remotely through gigabit network with sensors to understand swarm behavior, remote sensing, and those types of robotics. We also have SiteDeck, which is an advanced 2D and 3D collaborative experience where you can project 3D models and models of people so that, another room somewhere, it looks like we're in the same room and the experience is awesome. But it takes advantage of that real-time, low latency. And of course, 3D telehealth, where this application is used for elderly in tracking their actions with sensors in the house for a rehabilitation, but also to sense falls and so on, to sense emergency. But Planet Impact is a really good application. I just want to show you a quick video here again of what they have done there.
So what we're developing is Planet Impact. It is a web application and plugin for the building and construction industry. It's basically smart modeling for smart cities. The goal is to mainstream sustainable design. This outlines the steps that you take in order to use our web application. So our project definitely works best on gigabit networks, as was found recently when we tried to use it on a typical speed network and it just crashed. So that's really critical, but also the sharing of information, open data is really critical to our platform as well. So understanding how we can be sharing information between cities that relates to sustainability and resiliency. We wouldn't exist without US Ignite. They were one of the co-sponsors of the hackathon in which we were first developed. And then we're our first funders. If we're going to solve climate change, then we really need to be very actively looking at how we address the building and construction industry and how we can disrupt status quo there.
So these are just some exciting examples of applications we've developed to take it in these cities to take advantage of the ecosystem that's there. You know, we have 21 cities, and that's growing very quickly. I used to have long hair a year ago, but it's great because there are best practices, there are applications to share. Each city develops 2 smart cities applications per year, and that's shareable with all of the other cities. So you develop 2, you get access to many, many more. You know, and I can give you more examples, but I won't do that. They're on our website, and we can talk about it if you'd like, but there are over 100 gigabit application prototypes, at least prototypes to look at. But I wanted to quickly talk about Lafayette, because that's why we're here. And I truly believe in working with Michael Dunaway and Matt, that you have all the pieces in place for your smart city and your smart community. So you've got the gigabit infrastructure. I mean, I'm looking at the representatives and people I've met here. We've got the innovation ecosystem in place. You know, those relationships, building those relationships out are going to be really important. Similar to the map that I've shown, and we're working to help to develop a steering group to help Lafayette. You know, they're initial smart gigabit communities, so they're the vanguard of this program nationally. We see leadership from the academic institution here. The Center for Visual and Decision Informatics was just named the biggest institute of its type in the United States by the federal government, which is incredible. There are a growing number of smart cities initiatives, including Mozilla was mentioned, becoming a Mozilla gigabit city. You know, there's national leadership in public safety that's really grown over the last year, tracking way as a leader. We've seen the Plan Lafayette playbook, which talks about Lafayette over the next 20 years. I think we're going to hear more about that later. And of course, there are already gigabit applications in Lafayette in our program that some of you may or may not know about. So I thought I'd quickly share through 2 of those. So Dr. Christoph Bors has created one of my favorite applications. It's a streaming virtual reality application for education and workforce development. I'll let them explain what this is about.
I'm Christoph Boris. I'm an associate professor of science from the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. This is Sam Econ. He's one of the research assistants on the project. We're using virtual reality for education about alternative energy resources. So we're trying to teach high school students about the concepts of energy production, specifically a solar array. The virtual model allows students to take virtual field trips of the facility. These are students who may not be able to visit the real facility due to geographic constraints or scheduling constraints. We have delivered this to 3 high schools in Lafayette, and now using the high-speed network, we could invite schools from other cities to join in.
What's interesting to me about this application is definitely the streaming of the teacher to any place remotely. The ability to have someone there, but not really there to guide you, and to someone that actually knows about the things that you're looking at.
The network aspect of our project is that a real expert from the Energy Center can join the student and give the instruction and assess the student's understanding.
We're using Apple's Rift DK2, Razor Hydra, Connect on the other side of Academic Lafayette, and a very powerful graphics card, 500. Right now, I'm in place of a student, and the people in front of me are the experts for the facility. Right now, they will be describing what I'm looking at, and telling me facts about the Energy Center and the benefits of us being here remotely.
Through US Ignite, we have access to the high-speed network that enables us do this, for example, between Lafayette and Austin, like we're doing here today?
They demoed that in Austin last summer, from Lafayette to Austin. And this is an example of an application that other communities want to use for modeling, for firefighters, to train firefighters. You can't burn a building down every day. So, taking really big advantage of the network here. And then the second one I want to talk to you about is by Michael Dunaway and team, the Next Generation Business Emergency Operations Center, a virtual operations center that was deployed at the Major League Baseball All-Stars game, and most recently in the 2016 flooding. I'll let them tell you. And forgive me for all the writing. I just wanted to put all of this writing up here in case the slides are going to be shared, and also to show you how amazing it is that it requires a lot of text.
I'm the director of the NIMSAT Institute and the Louisiana Business Emergency Operations Center at the University of Louisiana in Lafayette.
Hi, I'm Dr. Raju Guttamukala. I'm the Director of Research for the Informatics Research Institute from University of Louisiana Lafayette.
The project is actually in the US Ignite portfolio in the public sector, and the goal of it is to develop a business emergency operations center concept that can improve the resilience of cities by connecting the private sector and the business community and the business resources into direct planning with professional management.
BEOC is an information sharing platform that allows the private sector and the public sector, the government, to kind of share information during a disaster. That we're going to apply analytics, like to predict where the fuel outages are going to be, what's the hotel availability going to be along these evacuation routes.
Well, we have a whole portfolio of research projects. Raju's got some very sophisticated software-defined network efforts that are underway, human geography mapping for social network analysis, fuel modeling for evacuation, some pretty sophisticated analytic projects. The goal of our center is to really bring all of those together and focus them on one point where we can deliver them to the public through an emergency operations center.
And what you're seeing here is we're actually bringing the sensor data from Levy, in real time into a 3D environment. And you have like a near touch interface that will allow emergency managers to actually navigate through the information, about the health of the levee, the water levels, structural integrity, and so on, in a much more efficient way than compared to the keyboard and a mouse and a simple GIS interface. So those are some of the kind of applications that we're developing, for the next generation of BEOC. I think US Ignite has benefited us tremendously because two things, right? Number one, one thing we haven't considered before is how we are going to deal with all the network management issues, right? And that is part of the US Ignite cities, number one. So we're doing a lot of work, research in the area of SDN and how we apply SDN tools to improve network management for public safety, number one, right? Number two, it has enabled us to connect with other communities, other cities across the country. We're talking to US Ignite, we've been talking to the city of Kansas, Chattanooga, and several other cities. So it's really opened up. Otherwise we would have just been limited to our city and our city. But now this has really expanded our horizons to, because the problem that we're trying to solve is relevant not just to Lafayette, Louisiana, or the state of Louisiana, but it's relevant to the across country. So it's greatly benefited us being part of the US Ignite community.
It directly relates to the resilience and the protection of individual communities, individual families, universities and schools, and all the people that populate a smart community and a smart city. So in effect, by tying in with the business community and relating them to the planning cycle for emergency management, we're improving the resilience of the entire population and the entire city infrastructure on the physical side, but also on the social side. And that's really, I think, the most significant aspect of what we're doing.
Michael is now a national leader for public safety and disaster management in the United States. So, as you can see, it's a pretty exciting time for Lafayette. It's a pretty exciting time for us to do everything that we can to bring all the resources we can here and expertise, and to you guys too. You have the infrastructure. You have all the community players, activities like the Code Fest. You actually have some very robust gigabit applications already that are being pushed to other communities nationally. And it's just, I'm so excited. I mean, I think the next 6 months are going to be critical for bringing the community together and to move forward in your smart community initiative. So with that, I'd like to end. Thanks so much for this opportunity.
Thanks, very enlightening. You gave a great example and some great ideas for collaboration, particularly across some of our neighborhood cities. As I indicated at the beginning, CGI has been a phenomenal sponsor of this event. But not only that, they have been just a great partner of the university and just an unbelievable business citizen of Lafayette. So I think it's very appropriate that they live across the street from us at these this installation that they're doing. And as I indicated earlier, Will and his team have been phenomenal. And we're very fortunate to have a speaker join us from CGI. Molly O'Neill has 25 years of experience in management and technology. She's a former U.S. Senate confirmed assistant administrator and former CIO at the U.S. EPA, where she was accountable for information security, privacy, data management, and technical infrastructure. So I'd like to welcome Molly O'Neill, Vice President of State and Local Government Industry for CGI.
All right, good morning, everybody. I tend to have a very loud voice. Can everyone hear me? Yes. So thanks for having me here. I really enjoyed that first presentation. That was fantastic. And boy, you guys have a great underlying backbone to do some really innovative things. And thanks for having me here. The other thing, since there are so many people with sort of environmental sustainability kind of backgrounds here, I've been talking to people. So I do have a background in all of that, as you just heard. And so I tend to always talk about the technology side, but I actually have a subject matter expertise in environment and energy as well. So I get real jazzed up with all this. And by the way, I'm an environmental biologist by academics. Okay? So we have a lot in common here. And when I was at EPA, a lot of people don't realize the CIO at EPA is actually also has a policy hat. It's one of the few things that CIOs in the federal policy hat and a technical hat. And why I loved that is because I could actually set policy and then utilize my own shop to figure out how to do it in an innovative way and then show other parts of the agency how to utilize data and information technology. So very, very unique. And I got to run the operations center, emergency operations center as well. So, so this is a great audience for me. I wanted to come to talk to you today about really getting real about smart communities. And we just put out, I have some up here, hot off the presses, because I'm going to kind of talk through this a little bit today. We didn't have hard copies because they're not off the printer yet, but we have little things where we can download these for free. The PDF version. We just put together what I'll say is a field guide to smarter communities, which is to me is about, there's so much out there, right? And often we don't have such good presentations about really how you put things together. There's so much out there, there's so many things to attend, so much innovation out there. How do you kind of go back and be real and kind of take things back to the office and do things? So we put this out. This is our second, what I'll say, field guide. I did one around cybersecurity last year. Because in my job at CGI, I get to look at everything, not just smart cities. I get to look at cybersecurity, I look at ERP systems, I look at everything. Taxation, fraud, waste, and abuse. So this is a partnership that we have with governing to really get real and have people have guides to actually make sense of all of this great innovation out there and what they can be doing. As part of this, we actually did a brand new survey of 200 city and local officials. And 75% of them said that they were really going about this as a very incremental. And I'll say that because at some point, everyone was gung-ho and seeing everything, and they're going to do these big bang kind of projects, and we're going to do everything, right? But you can't, it's really big bang boom, right? So the era of trying to do too much is just overwhelming. And even though there is so much opportunity out there, there's cost restraints, you want to coordinate, right? And you want to do all of those things. So people are now taking a step back according to the survey and saying, we're really going to do this incrementally. And the other thing is interesting, I'm just giving you a couple stats here to start. 49% said that what they're doing is very reactive. So that means citizens are asking them for things, right? And then 38%, and to me this is a real problem perhaps, said they consider factors such as age, diversity, income, and gender in what they're putting out there in terms of making the communities smarter. That means 18% of them aren't doing anything, and 44% don't know. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is, in the guide that we have, we talk about Songdo. Does everyone know about the story of Songdo in South Korea?
No.
All right, well, now you're about to, right? So Songdo was the very first big, built from scratch, one of the world's most digitized, connected, sustainable communities that was built out there, right? And it was, if they build it, will people come? And so what happened? Did people come? No. And the reason people didn't come, even though it's got everything that's out there and we can do things fast, and everyone's data is being collected, and all the apartment complexes had panels on them, and then you've got dashboards in your apartment complexes, and they're collecting data all over, which is where we want to get to. But the reality is, people didn't flock there because we're people. We want to live in our communities. We want to live with, Grandma can't live there. She can't even figure out how to do this. This is an embarrassing story for me, okay? So I consider myself a technologist. That's why I have a hard time doing a discussion like this, because this is really about being real. The reality is in my personal life, I'm rogue, okay? I do everything, I'm rogue, I'm connected to everything, right? So I have 2 different phones and don't want to bring the whole networks down at CGI, right? But the first time I went to Australia, okay, I was actually in a very smart hotel. And I spent there 15 minutes trying to figure out how to get the lights on. I was so embarrassed. I didn't know, because I'd never been in a fully connected hotel. I didn't know that little card that they gave me, my room key, was actually the thing that they put up there that allowed me to turn the lights on. And so that lights always went off if the key was gone, right? I felt so stupid. So can you imagine people just going to a place like this and having to be retaught? And I don't know how many of you are working with elderly people in your families, but it's tough sometimes, right? So the reason that people haven't flocked there, and there are more and more people moving there, is they had those expectations, but the reality is we like to work in communities that provide us jobs where we have our families, right? And so there's a sense, and that's why we have this big bang boom kind of area where we're trying to build the smartest city right away and hoping people flock there. What we want to do now is take our existing communities and incrementally raise them up, and to make sure people stay in the communities and stay in their jobs and work in their jobs, right? I love that story. So again, this initial smart city concept with all this stuff is just too bold for most communities to embrace, right? So instead we're building off these platforms, which is what you just talked about, right? There's a platform that you can build off, and then you can prioritize. And each city, state, and community needs to tackle everything differently based on their own priorities, focusing on the process of the problems and opportunities that might be out there. But smart can be hard. And there's a little discussion about it in the previous presentation. Listen, you can get grants, and grants are hard to get, right? There's a lot of opportunity to get there, and you're competing for a lot of grants. And even if you get those grants, you can do things, but you have to make sure they're sustainable, which was really the point that was made earlier. So how do you, even if you do have the money to do these things, how do you make sure that what you're investing in is a sustainable thing that you can keep going? Because if you give something out to the public and yank it back, they're not too happy, right? So you have to think about these things. Procurement, in terms of, it's a little bit easier on the local level than it is on the state level, where sometimes you're trying to go out there and get help from folks, but you don't have an avenue to do it because we haven't worked in some of these kinds of technologies before, and they don't lend themselves to typical procurement rules. Security and privacy. Every time you add something to your network, you pose risk to it unless it's already locked down, right? So every single time, so you have to have those considerations. We certainly saw that early on with a lot of cloud-based apps that were thrown out there. They seemed like it would fix a problem here and there, but yet there's no security. And I don't care what people tell you, if they say it's secure, you need to ask how secure, what's it certified under, right? How do you ensure security? You have to ask those additional questions. And then integration is a problem, especially if you have a lot of old legacy systems that aren't easy to integrate with. So smart can be hard. And let me just do this. And we all know this. So this is just some stats that are coming out of the survey here that, a lot of people are doing, controlled traffic lights and electric car charging stations. It's interesting to see how many people actually, when they're putting electric car charging stations out there, measuring whether those are the right locations, right? Which is something, an issue that I know CGI's been working on, where we've been rolling out a bunch of them overseas, to say you can roll them out and you can have them there, but are there any cars there to use them? And have you identified and figured out which ones are actually being used, and then how do you predict where you should move those that aren't being used to, right? And so, you can be smart, and I actually wrote a blog on this last week. You can be smart or use smart technologies, but doesn't mean you're smart, right? So, like I said, we have these smart vehicles, and we have these, vehicles that are out there, and we put the charging stations out there, and we're spending a lot of money doing that. But if they're not being utilized in that particular area, then you've invested money that isn't ready to have it invested there, or you haven't moved things and shifted things. So being smart is hard in some ways, right? But it's not always smart just because you're using technology. And I think that's one of the things that we really need to learn. Just because you're adding a new tool or technology does not mean you're doing it in the smartest way. So in the guide, actually, we talk through some of these things. What I wanted to get to, though, is to really talk about what you need to do. And at CGI, this is what we stress with our state and local clients, and community-based clients, is saying, listen, you really have to have a strategy, a digital strategy. And Lafayette seems to have the groundwork of a digital strategy, because you've actually got a baseline with partnership and building upon fiber optics and everything. But you've got to determine your priorities and define your vision. One of the things that people tend to do is jump to the solutions first. Right? And so what is the value add? Because you saw something really fun and swanky. I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyways, because it's really a federal case study, so I won't get in trouble. I can remember, I came out of the federal government in 2009, and I was a bit of a disruptor. I will say that. I don't know if Will knows that. So I was all about open data. I think I did the first government hackathon. We didn't call them hackathons at the time. I stole my own conference, and usually we're just showing, the different things we're doing. And 2 weeks before this big conference, we're going to have 1,000 people there. I said, I'm going to show, my own people don't understand how important open data and the fact that their jobs really are going to become less relevant unless they embrace this. So I actually stole my own conference. I said, I'm going to change my opening, and I'm going to steal, every time there's a plenary session of these 3 days, I'm going to steal all the people. I'm going to steal 15 minutes of that, even if I'm not a speaker. And by the way, all these vendors who are there, they're going to play in this. And I gave them a challenge. And I actually found a real environmental problem out in the west. It's called Puget Sound. And I said, we have an information access problem. I'm going to give you access to as much data as I can. I want you to build me apps to help them solve a problem. Give them a problem, and they hacked all the way through in the vendor community. First time they did. So I'm a little bit of a, like I say, a maverick in some ways. Okay, but I say that, and I love technology. But right after I left the federal government, and this is the point of the story, I saw this note, this big bang news press release. Federal government is issuing a mobile app on the IT portfolio. Let me tell you what that is. IT portfolio is what every federal agency is, what their big systems modernization projects are, the big dollar values and everything. And whether they're red, green, or yellow, meaning are they on time or on budget, and what the cost of the spend is, and who the contractor is. Okay? To me, I'm like, okay, that's great, and it's now available on the mobile app. And here's a person who actually used that data. Now I'm outside the federal government. I'm like, why are we excited about that? Who is going to care about that? First of all, that data is only refreshed once a year. Okay? Maybe some agencies are doing it every 6 months. So, and there's a press release on this. I'm like, who's the user? Who really cares about this? Well, no, I know the CIO at the time was just impressed we were doing a mobile app in the federal government, but to me, I'm like, we're past that, I hope, at this point. So my point here is, don't jump to solutions first. Did we really need a solution around that? We had a website. The data was not active data. It wasn't, this data you need to get to all the time because it's refreshed and doing all that. Couldn't we have spent that in other areas that people cared about, right? So my caution here is really make sure what your priorities are and don't jump to the solutions fast. And that's a very simplified solution, right? An example, but it can be easy to get swayed to things because it's easy and cheap when it doesn't solve a problem. Okay? I would have rather spent that money on, like, give me a mobile app that I can change my address to the Social Security Administration or something, right? Or I can check my tax returns or something like that. Give me something I care about. And then do a press release about it. So make sure you define the priorities and the vision. We'll talk about this in a minute. Take an incremental approach. Look for synergies, right? And again, a theme of the last talk here is to say, listen, when you're building something and you get enamored by something, look to make sure that it has other applications that you can do, right? You create an open data portal, that's used for all the data you're not doing separate ones. So look for those synergies. Identify and involve the stakeholders. And this, Lafayette is doing a great job at that. Look at the different people here in this building alone. You can't build these things alone, because really there's a lot of synergies that you can have and things. Everyone that you talk to is going to have different ideas and suggestions. That's why those hackathons are so important too, because you get insight into people are thinking about things that you aren't typically thinking about. Lock them down. No matter what you're doing, lock them down. I'm just going to highlight a couple of these. It's really about making sure that there's security and privacy involved in all of this, as I mentioned earlier. And show the results. Look for ROI. And to me, one of the things, it says ROL, I think. Clearly I didn't have my glasses on there, but return on investment. And I say that because we can get so involved in creating a big project, and then it becomes, because you're looking for that end result. It's often case to do the incremental approach. You can begin to show the ROI, whether it's cost ROI or benefit and outcome ROI. But if you have a long plan to get somewhere, and you take too long getting there, you've lost the momentum with your civic leaders and your citizens. So, like I say, I'm using the word ROI not just from a cost perspective, right, but from a benefits and outcomes. And so that's why incremental is so important. And if I look at the next slide, again, I just want to hit a couple of these. Incremental, and we've talked about this. We're seeing a lot of people roll out bulbs, right? So the first thing they want to do is put the LED bulbs in so they can reduce the cost, right? And that's an easy thing to show the ROI. To say my energy consumption for these city lights was X, and now it's 50% cheaper. But now I can get even cheaper because I'm going to dim them in certain areas, right? Or I'm going to Wi-Fi enable them, and maybe even open up the Wi-Fi to the public, right? Should I choose to do that to make sure it's locked down and secure, right? And then I'm going to add sensors to there, and maybe even cameras in those same places, because you want to put cameras maybe where you have lights. And we have seen cities sort of go down that path where they're not coordinated, and they put one thing up and not the other, and now, why did you put a light where you're going to have a camera? That doesn't make any sense, right? And that's where you show some things that are not coordinated. But in this case, if the vision was to lower the cost and conserve energy, right, an incremental approach is probably the right thing because you're showing value along the way. And so we're seeing a lot of community leaders really move towards this. Less of a big bang and more toward the incremental to show the ROI. So, in summary, so I do have my watch on here, my countdown. What does SMART look like? Well, SMART, when I say SMART in a smart community, everyone has a role here. So it's not just maybe the people in this room, right, who are working on really cool things, but it's also the people who, everything from the people who are taking your existing applications and replatforming them. Because what they're doing is they're getting them ready, right, to share data, to be able to be mobile, and to extract data out of it. So that's being part of the smart community. Sharing data sets and combining existing data to answer new questions or predict future outcomes is smart. And a lot of times you can leverage that. Will and I had an opportunity to chat with, let's say, a sister parish maybe 2 months ago. They told a great story about how they were having a traffic congestion problem. You remember that, Will? And what they did was the CIO, who was working with a lot of GIS, they pulled different data sets together. You know what they found out? Their traffic congestion was a couple days a week. So they were trying to figure out, do we have a lane problem? Do we have a light problem? You know what they found out by just combining the data sets? What was the problem, Will? Do you remember?
There was one elderly driver who was like...
Going to a doctor's appointment. But this is about being smart, right? So we're going to talk about these cool technologies, but really having open data and sharing data is really important, because in that case, they could have gone down the road, we need to invest in this, get a study together to plan to see if we need to expand the road lanes and switch the sensors and do all this. The reality is they pulled all the data together and they isolated the problem to one man who went to the doctors twice a week during rush hour. So now you can attack that problem a little bit different, right? That's me. Now you can attack that problem a little bit differently. That's my 20 minutes. Now you can attack that problem differently, right? So now you can go back and say, gosh, if we got rid of this, we don't have a congestion problem. We can either ask that man to schedule his appointments different, drive the van, which may be or do nothing and just say this is the way it is. But I say that with laughter, but the reality is anyone who's working on sharing data and all that is really part of building a smarter community, right? It really is. And the final point here is really investing in technology tools, but also leveraging them in new ways to make sure that they're secure. So look at your existing assets. And I think if I remember the story here a little bit, even on the open data, you're already paying or already had enterprise licenses, in geospatial, for Geospatial Hub and for data hubs. Utilize the resources that you have so that you can make the investments in areas where you need to do, where it makes sense to improve the citizens' lives in Louisiana. So just remember, being smart is a journey. We're all part of it because we all need to think smarter. And technology is a big part of that as well. So I appreciate the time. If you want more information, download that document. We'll try to keep it real. And I look forward to hearing what everyone else has to say today. So thank you.
About getting our next speaker up here, Andrew Rogers from Chattanooga. And Michelle gave some great examples of some of the innovation and work that's coming out of Chattanooga. And I know that Andrew has his hands on a lot of that. I've had the privilege of working closely with US Ignite Cities and being able to work with Andrew as a partner city. And he seems to be involved in everything as a technologist, as part of business development, as an entrepreneur, and kind of as a futurist in the city of Chattanooga. So, he's going to talk a little bit about collaborative efforts in the smart city. But it's one more quick note on Andrew. So, Andrew ended up arriving last night, 11:30 midnight, into Baton Rouge, and rented a car and drove across the basin in that storm last night. So his comment this morning was, "Does it always rain like that?" Andrew, it's all yours.
So thank you for the great introduction. And I just want, my main goal of coming down here is I wanted to learn how to say Lafayette correctly? Is that right? Did I get it? Is it Lafayette? Is it Laugh or Laugh? It is Laugh. Okay. And this is like everyone in the country, I think, struggles with this, but in Chattanooga we have an especially difficult struggle with this because we have a city in Georgia just 10 miles down the road, and there it is Lafayette. So anyway, so Lafayette. All right. So I'm Andrew Rogers. I'm with the Enterprise Center. The Enterprise Center is a 501c3 that is tasked with addressing these 3 core civic initiatives in Chattanooga. We have Innovation District Development, which is our kind of urban core, redeveloping and doing economic development through real property space. Research and Applications Development, which is really the space I head up and we work closely with US Ignite on. And then Digital Equity, which is really in our organization, and I'm involved with slightly, but mostly headed up by its own kind of independent group, and I'm mostly going to be talking about the community. So this is not news to anyone, and honestly, the good news I think is that there's this emerging theme about collaboration and working together from the speakers before me. The bad news is you've probably heard everything you need to hear from them, and this is probably wasting time. But anyway, so researchers in academia are siloed. That's not an argument. It's not really a thing to be embarrassed about. I think in Chattanooga it was probably worse than most other places, so that's kind of the perspective you'll see from this talk. But I think everywhere would recognize that they have room they can improve on this. And so are city agencies. So there's kind of a, you got bad and you got bad, and you add them together, it doesn't really make things great. So, and the challenges we all face as citizens are not siloed. When we need the cameras and the streetlights in the same place for our public safety, that, there's nobody's walking through there getting mugged and going, yeah, but this is the jurisdiction of the public works and this is the jurisdiction of IT, right? So that's just not happening. So the question is, how do we bridge this divide? And I want to be very clear that no representation is made that these problems are solved in Chattanooga. But I do want to kind of give everyone some concepts of, I think the concepts, the broad perspectives are prescriptive, and the rest of it is more descriptive. So, thing that the approach we took is we need to use the assets we have, which I think layers very, very nicely with everything Vishal and Molly said earlier. And the thing to remember is that these organizations, these assets, these resources are all people, and that can complicate things, but is I think part of the beauty of solving it. So in Chattanooga, what we did was we formed this external initiative to both the city, the university, and I didn't really put them in here, but obviously the vendors, the technology providers, all those companies and other entities within the community that make up our community are important players here as well. So the Enterprise Center in 2014 was retooled from an organization that had been focused on technology transfer and earmark funds to focus on these key strategies that the city did not feel nimble enough on its own to address. And then we kicked off the Research and Applications Development Initiative at the beginning of last year. So our goals were to apply cutting-edge research to citizen services in a sustainable way, that making sure that the things we do continue and have a pathway into the future. We want to increase access to research funding, foster a spirit of innovation within the government entities as they exist, the agencies, and develop our research communities to think beyond the lab, and in the end make Chattanooga a better place to live, work, and play. And I think here you're for Lafayette. So just a few little things, and this talk is short, so won't keep you from break too long. But the microscope, I think that Nishal highlighted as a key example. you know, a lot of times researchers get hung up on just getting to the research paper and then starting the next research paper, the next project, next funding. But when you get the educators involved, that project was really started by a researcher, by a guy with an idea at the University of Southern California. You know, Chattanooga can't take a lot of credit for starting with the idea. But what we did was we got the educators that were interacting with the kids, that understood the education system, involved in shaping the grant, shaping the project as a whole, the entire initiative. And what we have now is a sustaining, continuing, the grant's done, and we're still having this program happen. We're getting our own microscope. We're going to be delivering this into all of the schools in Chattanooga. We're hoping to get it into schools in Lafayette and other USCID cities as well. So lasting impact comes from operationalizing these things, not just getting a paper published and moving on. This little phrase here, cross-sector multi-stakeholder coalitions, is a thing that a researcher at Harvard Business School uses a lot, Rosabeth Moss, but it's true. The old saying, you know, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That's, you know, it's just true. The more of your community partners you get involved, the more stakeholders you have that are invested in the success of these initiatives, the better your chances of having something that really truly transforms your community. So the kind of the next little thing here: increase access to research funding with collaboration for outcomes. The tighter the partnerships, the more the folks who are the stakeholders in your community are communicating and working together, the better the outcomes are. The better that you can tell the story of how you will deliver value and why the funding organization should provide the funding to you. And I apologize, the illustrations are a little formulaic, but this is my first time giving this proposal. I've been thinking about it a lot, or a presentation talking about it a lot, and kind of putting it together quickly over the last few weeks. But anyway, this is just, this has been very key for Chattanooga. 18 months ago when we got involved, the city itself, the actual municipal entity, we got plenty of grant funding, but as far as actual NSF or research-focused grant funding, really not much to speak of. And by attaching, and our university hadn't really been involved in smart city initiatives either, but by attaching and getting the university partners and the community, the agencies in the city communicating, working together, we've unlocked funding that just would not have been available, wasn't possible. So back in last year, which was really our first initial success with this, of the 13 NSF 16553-year grants that were awarded nationally, Chattanooga was the key partner in 2 of those, which is huge for a small community, same size as Lafayette approximately. It was a big deal for us. This spirit of innovation, you know, when we're siloed and we tend to just talk to folks that we know that look like us and talk like us and think like us and have, you know, been facing the same problems we've been facing, we end up just kind of rehashing some of the same things over and over and over and over again. Not only are they formulaic, they don't make much sense. But anyway, but when we bring these ideas, these other perspectives, my background, I've had a very broad background in almost every career or position I've held. The value I brought to the table was by bringing a perspective that was not there before I got there. So by putting these partners together, these stakeholders together, and getting the problems in front of multiple people, and this is a problem in cities. Cities don't like to talk about their problems. They don't like sharing their problems. They like to try to make it look like everything's rosy and good. But by getting all the stakeholders together and really focusing on the problem from a broader perspective, you get better ideas. You get you get better outcomes for your citizens. And I think one of the more important things that we've learned is you can't go to a city agency and a researcher when there's $10 million on the table and a month to put a proposal together and expect to have great results. It's just not going to happen. Find small wins, find small things you can do. This goes back to Molly's incremental changes. Find little things you can do together that build those relationships, that get the players comfortable with each other, and you'll have a lot better luck. You'll have a far better success putting together true solutions to the problems with real participation from all the partners. And as a sign of this, in the last 610, which is the newest SEC solicitation, Chattanooga is in 4 of the grant applications. We're very excited and hopeful we get something out of that. And then the last little point I'll make is developing our research community to think beyond the lab. If you're in this cycle of you have an idea, do the research, and publish a paper, ad infinitum. There's not a lot. The NSF talks about the valley of death for these research projects where they're great ideas. They get through the publishing phase, and then that next step, the step between publishing and commercialization, there's just a lot of space and a big gap. But if you bring in the stakeholders, you bring in the partners, you bring in people who are invested in the outcome of that initiative or that project early, the earlier the better, and you can mix biology and milk and then add fire stations, I mean, you're going to get some really great stuff. But no, if people are, oh crap. If people are really invested, you come out of the initiative with the customer, with the market, with the people who are going to make it sustainable and are going to keep adding things to the mix to continue building value for your citizens. And that's where the phase we're in right now. We as an organization are involved in 9 grant applications currently that are being reviewed, and all of them are with us really just being the connector and the convener of key community organizations that have the right perspective for those particular grants, and working with really interesting researchers both in the Chattanooga ecosystem but also across the country. And I'm talking about this all, I said this was broadly prescriptive and narrowly descriptive. So you don't have to have an enterprise center or another entity like that outside of anything to do this. You just have to have somebody doing it, right? You have to have, Matt, and I think the centers here at the school are great. They're doing this. I think they're doing this role in Lafayette. So don't think I'm saying you need to go. I'm saying Lafayette's not doing this correctly. You need to do this. It's not what I'm saying at all. Just showing. And this is our goal. This is what we're continuing to do. Working with all these entities, working with the city agencies, working with the vendors, the commercial partners, and the university. And to clarify, these are all hard problems. This is not like just follow these steps and this is easy. I think when Molly said that smart can be hard, that's not correct. Smart is hard. There's no question there. If you're really doing something smart, it's going to be hard. There's definitely no one size fits all. The other thing I want to clarify, because it kind of comes across that I'm saying the only valid thing is research that has direct application to citizens. That's obviously not true. Science is awesome. More science is better. Primary research is important. However, when your science, when your research has that intersection with real life, with citizens, make it meaningful, get the right partners, get the right stakeholders at the table to make it meaningful. And then just my final little thoughts here. This collaboration is all built in relationships. Relationships are hard. And collaboration won't happen without dedicated focus on building relationships. Chattanooga has, everybody got their phrase. Chattanooga has working together works, which hides a lot of hard work behind the scenes. And this is the other phrase that we don't publish as much, but is actually what's happening behind the scenes. It won't happen unless somebody wakes up every day thinking about making it happen. And this is a secret to a lot of our success, because it turns out, like, This sounds hard. This sounds like you need a research director who's out there doing this every day. But we have found huge success in giant initiatives that seem untenable by simply reserving some amount of resources. It doesn't have to be every day, though. It actually can be, one day a week somebody wakes up. And this is kind of the US Ignite model with the technical leaders. Hugely, I think this is the right way to go. When you have someone thinking about it, when you have someone who it's their job, and you're not relying, you're going to get the other folks, the people that are in these partnership organizations, they will convene around this person who is waking up every day focused on making it happen. So with that, thank you. Any questions, or I guess come find me, and I'll turn it back over to Matt.
Thanks, Andrew. I think a lot of us understand, and I think you all now understand why we wanted to invite Andrew to come down about their approach in Chattanooga. Again, a similar size city, a lot of the same challenges, but yet a lot of successes. They've laid a great foundation, a great framework. And what's been great about the US Ignite partner cities is that sharing is kind of foremost among everything, right? And we're not shy when it comes to copying, right? So